Next Bridge Ministry on the second Saturday. If you're riding in the church van, be here by 11, or get in contact with my dad, Jess, Kevin, Sean, Pastor Bill, somebody. And December the 15th is our Christmas dinner here at 4 o'clock. The sign-up sheets are in the back, right? Okay. Sign-up sheets are in the back. And as I read, it said do not take the pen, so don't take the pen. December the 30th is our dedicated fifth Sunday to go down to Solomon's Porch. We'll meet here at 5 o'clock for a quick word from Pastor Bill and some praise and worship here, and then head over there for their praise and worship. And the last Thursday of this month, our praise and worship team will be here for Breaking Point. So come out and be with us for that also. Thank you.
Doing this at all, I guess we probably should take up offerings also. And anybody that has, that wasn't here this morning that has any, praise reports or prayer requests, just put them down, write them down on your little sheet, or you can blurt them out, yep. Jesus healed. Starting in verse 13, God's word reads, "They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, I put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Now we see that the Pharisees are going to try to do anything they can to discredit Jesus. They will do anything to make sure that people do not believe that Jesus is who he says he is. Even so far as saying that Jesus broke the law because of when he healed this blind man. And the way he did that, or the way they did that, what they were going to use was the fact that in the scriptures it says that Jesus needed the clay in order to put it on his eyes to heal, or to give him his sight back. Believe it or not, back then, kneading, such as with bread, or in this case with clay, was one of the 39 classes of work that was forbidden on the Sabbath day. Now, do you really think Jesus didn't know that he was doing this on the Sabbath day? He knew. He knew without a doubt he knew it. But he was taking the initiative, and he did this miracle. Why do you think he did that? Do you think maybe he was trying to challenge the religious leaders? What do you think he was trying to do? Show them that. Well, exactly. Because like I said, he could have chosen any day to do it. But because Jesus did not keep the Sabbath, the Pharisees were going to use that as an argument to say he was not from God. He didn't line up with their traditions, with their laws, that were going to bring them the recognition. They were all about themselves. Now, would you have ever thought that this sentence could be attributed to Jesus? That Jesus often divided men? Seems kind of strange when we're talking about Jesus, when we're talking about, or when we're talking about God. You know, because you always think that Jesus would want to unite men, to bring men together. But that's not ever going to happen, because there are those that trust and accept him, and there are those who don't. And since men have free will, it's their choice as to whether they follow God and whether they don't. The Pharisees wanted to make it seem like Jesus was a sinner. and that he should be rejected because he broke the law. And even though Jesus had performed miracles and everything that Jesus did was good and for the good of his Father, they still wanted man to reject him. They didn't want, the Pharisees didn't want men to see him as being from God. Now, the man that Jesus healed, he knew Jesus was from God because he didn't feel like a sinner could do such wonderful works. And why would a sinner even want to do such wonderful works, such miracles? So the Pharisees, or the religious leaders, had made up their mind about Jesus, and they weren't going to be dissuaded. They were saying that he was not a man of God, that he was not of God. So they decided that they were going to the man that Jesus healed of blindness and get his opinion of what kind of man Jesus was. What kind of man did he feel like Jesus was? The blind man, the healed blind man, automatically said he's a prophet. But stop and think about it. If you notice in Scripture, when Jesus healed the blind man, let's go back and let me read. Of course, his disciples were asking him when they first met the man who had sinned, the man or the man's parents, that he was born blind. Of course, Jesus told them that neither the man nor his parents had sinned. So when he decided to heal the man, of course, he took the clay, or made clay out of the ground with his saliva, and he put it on the man's eyes. And he told the man, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Didn't tell him as he was putting the clay on his eyes, he didn't tell him, I'm doing this, I'm going to heal you, you're going to get your sight. He never said any of those things. Never. He just told him, after he put the clay on his eyes, go wash in this pool. And when the man went, washed in the pool, when he came out, he could see. But you could probably figure that when Jesus was doing all this for the man was sitting here thinking, okay, something's going to happen. He hasn't told me what. He hasn't told me that he's going to heal me, but something's going to happen. And I'm trusting that he's telling me these things, so I'm going to do them. But if you also notice, Jesus was not even around when the man got his eyesight back. Jesus had sent him somewhere, and when he came out, Jesus wasn't around where he was. And probably he was saying that he was a prophet because, in a sense, by his actions, Jesus had prophesied that he was going to gain his sight because Jesus told him what to do. He put the clay on his eyes and told him to go wash in the pool, and he got his eyesight back. But the thing is that this happened to this man, and all this man knew about Jesus at the time was his name. He knew that his name was Jesus. And remember, Pastor told us this morning that Jesus was a very common name back then. So just because his name was Jesus at that point, that didn't tell the man that he was anything special. Yet, he trusted Jesus. There was something about Jesus that made the man trust him. And when the man came out, he could see. The Jews, in verse 18, tells us, but the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? Parents couldn't really tell him anything. All the parents could tell them is, this is our son. We know that he was born blind. We know that he now can see. But we don't have any idea about who opened his eyes, who healed him, who made it to where he could see. What you need to do is, he's of age, you need to go talk to him. You need to let him tell you what happened, how it happened, and who did it. The parents had to be careful too, because there was a threat of them being excommunicated if they had told the religious leaders, okay, yeah, we know this person that did this is Christ. We know that's the only answer. It had to be Christ. They had to be very careful, because they didn't want to be excommunicated. But you know, it's pretty instinctive for parents to want to protect their children, even when our children are adults. I mean, it's just something takes over. We want to always protect our children. And the fact that these parents went on to tell the religious leaders that he was of age, go and talk to him, you know, that kind of speaks to how frightened they were by the threat of what would happen to them if they mentioned Christ, or said they thought he was the Son of God, or any of that. So what they did was they put the attention back on their son and got it off of them. So the religious leaders go back to talk to the blind man that was now healed. And the blind man wasn't afraid to say that he gives God glory. The religious leaders are the ones that was telling him when they were talking to him to give God the glory. Don't need to give the glory to this man, whoever he is. God needs to be given the glory for what happened to you. Because we know that this man is a sinner. Talking about Jesus. And the blind man had a pretty good comeback for that too. The blind man that could see, now says, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. And I think probably, if we had been on the conversation, he probably would have said, I don't really care. But the one thing he knew was that he was blind, but now he can see. And the religious leaders, they didn't want Jesus to get any of the credit whatsoever. None. On one hand, they wanted the healed blind man to tell the truth, but then on the other hand, they wanted to deny Jesus getting any credit for any of the healing. Did you ever think you would hear anybody or read where anybody said Jesus was a sinner? That really struck me as odd when I was reading it a little while ago. Well, that's part of it. It's that Jesus didn't want to obey their man-made traditions and their man-made laws and everything. Plus back then they didn't want this person Jesus to be the Messiah. When you stop and think about it, Jesus was not no, it's still but Jesus, from the time he started preaching and teaching, he was not what people thought he was going to be as the coming Messiah, as the Son of God. They thought there was going to be so much more bang for the buck, so to speak, when the Messiah came. And he came in his first 33 years. He came for the very reason that he was supposed to. And part of that reason was so that he could relate to his human side. He came as a man so that he could relate to us. Let me put it that way. That's a better way of saying it. He didn't come flaunting who he was. He came to pay our debt. And the thing about it is if you see through the scriptures, the man that was healed from blindness, he didn't really know much about Jesus at all. He knew that Jesus touched his life, and that Jesus touched his life in a very, very big way, because he had personal experience from it. Jesus touched him, Jesus touched his eyes, he was healed. And the thing about it is, another thing that made the religious leaders so upset was that they couldn't argue with that. The man was blind, Jesus did what he did, and the man could see. There was no refuting that. And plus, this was a man that had been blind from birth. So in verses 26 through 27, religious leaders are still adding. In 26 it says, "Then they said to him again, 'What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?' And he answered them, 'I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?'" Ooh, I bet that made them stop and take notice. Do you also want to become his disciples? He did two things with that statement. That man that was healed, whether it was intentional or not. He proclaimed himself to be a disciple of Jesus. But he also kind of in your face with, do you want to become a disciple of his also? You're asking so many questions. Well, you're wanting to know so much about him. And in verse 28, "Then they reviled him and said, 'You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses, As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. Well, who did they think Moses followed? Who do they think Moses got his instructions from? From God, exactly. And they actually know that God spoke to Moses. Then the blind man says, the man answered and said to them, why, this is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from. Yet he has opened my eyes. Verse 31. Pay attention to this one. Now we know that God does not hear sinners. Does that give anybody cause for pause? Now we know that God does not hear sinners. Second part of that verse is, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears them. What does that mean? I think you're on the right track, Will, but if he doesn't listen to sinners, he's not going to listen to me. Joe, what do you say? But now in this particular verse, this was the healed man that was saying this. That's true. That's true. And that's true. That's true. But we also know that when we sin, if we don't, even if we ask for forgiveness, if repentance is not in there, it kind of cancels everything out. Because you can't continue to sin, or the same sin over and over again. Ask God for forgiveness and go out and do the same sin over and over and over again. It doesn't work that way.
This is actually the blind man.
Yeah, this is actually the blind man speaking. Yeah. But that's what it's referring to here. Because listen, the second part of that says, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. If a person goes out and sins, asks for forgiveness, but then goes out and does that sin all over again, is he in God's will? No. No. You know, we've had that discussion many, many times because you know, we talk about the Christians that, well, the people that think they're Christians because they can go Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday and do whatever they want to do. Come into church on Sunday, ask for forgiveness or ask for forgiveness wherever, and then go right back out Monday through Saturday and do everything they were doing all over again. And that just doesn't work. But, and that's what we were just saying though. God hears sinners if they are a worshiper of God, does his will. That's what the second part of the verse says. But that's what I'm saying. If somebody prays, they pray for forgiveness, that they continue to go out and do the same thing over and over again, that doesn't. No more. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That's why repentance is so very important. So very important when we're asking for forgiveness. Okay, so verse 32 through 34. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. I think that says it all right there. I mean, the fact that Jesus healed a blind man from his blindness, somebody that was born that way, where else would it come from but from God? That's right. So in 34, they answered and said to him, "You were completely born in sins, and are you teaching us?" And they cast him out. You know, it said earlier in the scriptures that his parents, the blind man's parents, were afraid of excommunication. But you know, in this verse right here, it says they cast him out. It doesn't say anything about they excommunicated him. So probably what they did here was just expelled him from the synagogue. Excommunication takes a little bit more of a formal procedure than just to say, "We cast you out." And the good thing about this is that because they expelled him from the synagogue, it turned out to be a good thing. Because even though at this point the healed blind man knew that Jesus was from God, he still did not have that intimate relationship that we should all want and strive to have. And with him being expelled from the synagogue, it helped him to be more and to become more connected to Jesus in his walk. And you know, the one good thing about these scriptures and about the story is that not only did Jesus heal this man from blindness, but he healed him, or he gave him a sight that goes way beyond physical sight. He gave this man the hunger to want to know more about Jesus, to know more about where he came from, why he was here. And that's what every one of us should want. We should want that intimate relationship with Jesus. We should want to know he loved us as much as he did. Loved us so much that he died for us. It was short, guys. I don't have all the punch that Pastor Bill has. But I see that the beginning of the next group of scriptures starts with the heading of true vision and true blindness. Yes.
Now, when you go down to where we was just at with the second part of the scripture in
31.
yes, it says, when we go back to 28, and they heard and exalted him and said, you are this fellow's disciple, which is the disciple of Moses. But that's still the Pharisees talking.
Yes.
Okay. And right after that, it says, we know that God spoke to Moses, but for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from. That's when the blind man answered. Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. In verse 1, that's the Pharisees talking.
No, that's the blind man talking.
He's not the way, he's just the eye. He's just the eye. He's not the way. In my Bible, it says, we know that God does not listen to sinners. We listen to godly person, which godly person in my Bible is not that. Now, the verse above that is, we know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to a godly person who does his will. So, for me reading it, it said, from my understanding, is we, the Pharisees, talking after the man that answered. Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from yet. He opened my eyes.
See,
And
it's,
the Pharisees picked up from that one.
well, my Bible
And
says,
they already doubted that Jesus opened his eyes.
see, my Bible says that it's the heal man's major premise that God doesn't listen to sinners.
Because I just was reading it, so Jesus talked to one nation of the rest of the scripture, 30, 34. And I understood as we, being the Pharisees, was the one that was answering that man, the blind guy. So they was responding to his answer that God, that is remarkable. We don't know where he comes from yet. He opened my eyes.
But see, the reason I was going with what it said about we know that God does not hear sinners is because it starts in verse 30, it starts talking about the man answered, and he's talking this whole thing, and in this whole thing, my Bible is in quotations, saying that the man is saying all of these,
But in my
this whole thing.
Okay, I see now. It does say where the man answered. The now part is in quotation. So it's on what or 33.
See, my quotations start in verse 30. After it reads, the man answered and said to them, then the quotations start, and it doesn't end until after 33. So that's the man, that's the healed man saying,
So he's also said in 32 that no one has ever heard of the opening of eyes before by
yeah. And he's also saying if this man were not from God, he could do nothing. Because see, the religious,
Before it says to this day reply.
yeah, that's the religious leaders, the Pharisees, yeah. And see, the reason they're casting him out is because remember back when pastor was preaching this morning, and he said that Jesus' disciples asked him who was the sinner for the blind man to be born blind, he or his parents. Who sinned? Well, he said, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Well, you know, since Adam and Eve, we were born sinners. I mean, we come into the world sinners. So, and the answer was neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So, so then when the religious leaders in verse 34 says, you were completely born in sins, that's what they're saying. You know, the religious leaders were still saying and thinking like the disciples were, that this man was blind because somewhere there's sin. Either his parents or he did it. But Jesus told them, no, that wasn't the reason he was born blind. The reason he was born blind was so that God could reveal himself on this very day. And then the religious leaders are saying, okay, you were completely born in sin, yet you're trying to teach us? And then they cast him out. But you know that, I kept going back to that this afternoon when I was looking over this, because it kept gnawing at me. You know, we know that God does not hear sinners. What?
But you know, if you go up there a little further, I mean, it's kind of the weak part. That's the part that it's, well, when I read that one, I thought, well, that can't be. But when I read it a little further, you know, it's
You going back to 28?
the weak, yeah, the weak part, because
Those are the religious leaders that are talking there, where they say, we know that God spoke to Moses.
right, and then right after they said that Moses is, it says, they heard when it from that in 28, and said, you are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses. The rest of it, all the way down through there, is the weak.
As far as, yeah.
So that's why I was asking if this is definitely
Okay, my Bible goes with the we up until verse 30, and in verse 30, the man starts talking.
right. But then the we comes back. There's no we. The man is by himself. So was he a Pharisee, or was he, part of not the religious leaders so much then, but
Well, now see, I think the reason we see the we here when the man is talking is because here they're talking about God. There's no argument between the blind man and the religious leaders about God. The argument here is about Jesus. Yeah. So that's what he's saying. We know.
that we know that God does not. That's
Right. Right. Dawn?
This is my, I think some of it is that when they're talking about sinners and that he does not hear sinners, that's not safe. I think we're going real in depth on that word sinner, and it may, and I'm kind of like you, read it more at home, but I think it's more or less trying to do the save versus non-save. Because if you're not saved, you're considered a sinner.
But
Once you get saved, you're considered God's child.
we have to
But we
pray
still
to
sin.
ask for
We
And
salvation.
you
have
still
to
sin
still
and
do your
everything,
part.
but you're not considered,
still have to
but
do your
you're
half.
God's child. You're not going to be called a sinner. You're going to be called God's child. Yes, you're going to commit sins, but you pray and you ask for forgiveness and everything. The others, the non-saved, are blatantly, kind of like, for instance, Pastor preached on intentional and non-intentional. Non-saved are intentionally sinning.
But in order to become saved, we've got to pray. how,
not saying not pray. I didn't say anything about pray.
but he's got to hear us to
Right.
offer, to give us
I mean, you
salvation.
got to pray. You're absolutely right. I am saying that. I'm saying I'm just saying, I think the word sinners in there and everything is talking more about people who aren't saved. God don't hear those who are not saved. Now, what, and then maybe the act of while you're committing the sin or whatever, yes, you pray to get saved. I understand that. I mean, we could probably debate this for the next 3 days. I'm kind of like him, I got to go more detailed into it, but I don't.
Because, right after that, he does say that, he listens to God, but does his will.
Right.
So that,
Be the
that,
same.
like, if you're doing, God's will, we're all gonna sin. I'm just trying to figure out if that was actually the case. That was my whole point. I'm not saying, do I believe that God doesn't listen to sinners? I believe God. But, and then right after that is where he listens to God, the person who does his will. So if we're doing our part, he does listen.
But do you believe that he listens to the sinners before they come to him? If you're out there living life, having a good old time, and then you say, God, I want to win the lottery tomorrow.
If you're gonna keep living in the negative way, right. I mean, I understand that point. It's just how it's put in here, how it's worded, or whichever. You can take 31 and break it down, just half of 31 and say that's baloney. But then when you read into it, the second half of 31, then it becomes a little bit more clear. He listens to the godly person who does his will.
That's the other thing I was going to say.
Right.
See, that's what they were so upset he didn't say. That was horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does. I agree. Well, can't see. Right. Can't see. Right. The death was, right.
Kevin, I'm going to say one more thing about this verse 31 that we were talking about God not hearing sinners. I think that it goes with the second part of this verse, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. I think that goes back to trying to put this as simply as I can. That the sinner that he's talking about are those that don't repent.
You know, 24, the last part of 24, it said, we know this man is a sinner. That's the reason I asked you about the reason they're calling Jesus. I guess they're talking about Jesus for this man that healed the blind man.
That's in verse 24, it's the religious leaders that are talking here.
That we know this man is a sinner.
Right.
Jesus.
Yes.
Then how do they know that he was a sinner? Where did they get their knowledge of him being a sinner? Because he worked on just
Yes.
go out.
Yes. He's breaking the laws. Mm-hmm.
So, if they're saying that we know this man is a sinner, now in 31, they're saying that we know that God does not listen to sin, which they're calling Jesus a sinner.
But in 31, that's the blind man talking. The healed blind man.
Back to the weak part.
Yeah.
There's no we high, so that's what's getting me confused is no one who is actually going to speak.
Yeah.
But we know that God spoke to Moses. They know that because of they call.
Right.
But for this fellow, we don't even know what he knows.
But everything that he's done in the name of God. So
That's why I said that the religious leaders are saying we know that God does not listen to sin.
but see, there again, remember, they're trying their best to make people or to discredit Jesus because they don't want people to believe that he's the Messiah. They don't want him to believe that he's the Son of God.
Understand that. I can understand the argument here. It's not really an argument, but this is how we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe it? I believe God listens to everything. That's what you choose to do with it. After you speak it to him and he hears it, is the part of redemption part.
Well,
Because long before I was saved, God still heard me. I'm sure. No doubt. Because he wouldn't let me live his life doing what I wanted to do. He didn't understand. That's the way I see it. If God listened to the dead, and he reaping the benefits in listening to things right along. Now it comes from the heart. I know without a shadow of doubt. You might have to go through a little narrow gate with some folks. But I'm completed.
well, he knew. Mm-hmm.
But it makes sense. I mean, if God wasn't ready for me to have this conversation, I wouldn't be having this conversation. So, outlawed it. We got a big hole. Massive hole. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's done the bridge, too. That's Rogers, up on that Saturday.
Well, a lot of times too, when you're talking about religion, religion is made all up of man's doctrine, not God's doctrine. And that's where the problem comes in. Right. Right. Well, I mean, he was encompassing himself, the Pharisees, everybody at that point.
But through Jesus is how we get to God. So if they don't believe in Jesus, I can see why they would be saying that God doesn't, because they're living in their own law.
Yep.
You know, and some people that actually pray that just try to cover it. I'm gonna pray on that one. Because that's a whole other class.
Yeah, y'all see the scripture that, Scott's got up there? I was trying to read and say your name at the same time, and I couldn't do two things at one time. The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open unto their cry. The face of the Lord is against them that do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. And the righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. He keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken. Evil shall slay the wicked, and they that hate the righteous shall be desolate. Well, I think the really important thing here is when they're talking about God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. $139.40. Did you hear that, Scott? 39.
139.
Verse 40. Well, there's not a 40. There's not a 40 in chapter 139. If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there.
But I also, I agree with, John as well. I mean, you have to, you have to do your part. I don't know the real way of saying it. You can't keep going back to that same old water hole. When I asked God to take me out of bars, He took me out of bars. I don't even go have a, I don't really want to do karaoke anymore, because I know He took me out of there for a reason. So why do I want to go back to that same old ass water hole? So I have to, when I ask for repentance, I ask like this over again. I can't do it by myself. Will you please do it? He did. He took side, all of them. I used to use, I like to shoot cool. I put no dogs, okay, we'll do that over here at this, church, or we can go, we can have at ours, whatever you can go, be around. So why? Place for me was I really going to the club. It wasn't to shoot pool. It was to do the sin that I asked God to take it away. I don't take it. I don't know how long. I don't know how much time it could be here. A lot of things happen that changed in my life all at one time. The addiction, that part of it left. The clubs left with my last traffic stop going to a club to do wrong. That was after. And that's not talked to me. He said, "What are you gonna take him?" I said, "That was the way. That was when I took him. Man, that was so."
Well, God already knew where you were headed, because He knows every arrow.
I know that.
He knows where we
I
are.
mean, that's what I was speaking on this morning in Sunday school, about the grace. We question it. Well, I sure was lucky. Was lucky that because God did it. But, I was lucky that I was going to be out this far. It took like it may have been shift change, I don't know. But the mercy and the grace was on my side. Nobody did it for us sometimes. We could have done without. That was a wake up call. So, the point I was trying to make is going back to the same award on what you repent, that's not taking. Going back there. What are you doing next when you blaspheme God? You're going against what God had already instructed you not to do. So that's the slap them all the time.
Oh, well, you're throwing it in his face. You're saying,
I
okay,
can do this on my own. I don't need you.
no,
That's
you're
pretty
saying,
much-
I can do what I did, ask you for forgiveness, you can forgive me, and I can go right back out and do it again, because you're gonna forgive me again when I ask you to.
So
You don't want
the
that
whole
way.
point of that story was taking me out of the club, and I made excuses why I wanted to go gamble, drink, do lunch. There you go.
Those were the
I
true
just summed
reasons,
it
but
up
that's what
and
you were
put
calling it.
clubs. I just summed it up simply for time. We got it for
Took a lot of ground.
Yes, it did. And he did take a lot of it out. He took it all. Still one little thing on it. Got to put it on the strings. But he's working. He's working. I'm not going to stop. Probably too far to see you go away.
Yes, he has.
But I'm still on it. I'm going to, this is a new national version, so I'm going to actually go to the King James. I'm going to go to my study Bible. I'm going to go to my study Bible too. The Bible speaks to me in the Bible. Study Bible. I just want to.
Let us know.
The weed part.
That's what He
what's
wants us to
confusing me.
do.
Yeah,
He wants us to
So what?
Instead of that,
What? No, I just just saying that's what I'm looking at.
Because, I mean, he wants to know for himself.
Yeah.
He
I'm pretty
believes y'all,
sure
but he
that-
still wants the
I just don't know
conformity.
the way. I mean, the
And
quotation,
I feel the same way.
the quotation does say that the blind man was saying like that.
And see, I believe he's right for what he's wanting to do, because I believe that's, I'm like you, I think that's what God wants you to do. Because God does not want you to take him for,
Oh, no, definitely not.
You know.
Definitely not.
But I think he's also talking about the way he is.
He knew
Now
that
trusts.
he knew that that man was from God.
Why?
Yep.
If you look here to do this exact thing, some reason, I don't know what that reason is.
Well, you never know, Kevin. When you go and look at it for yourself, you're by yourself. You're doing what you want to do as far as the scriptures. He may reveal something to you that he hasn't revealed to anybody else.
He may do that later on in life. I read it.
That's true.
You know, Terry always said I could read that same scripture. You know, at first I was, I just, yeah, because it went over my head. But that makes it read it over and over again. You know, there's some kind of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
But as long as you open, you got to be open-heartedly and open-minded.
well, when you're reading it, there's different things going on in your life, and there's different reasons you're looking.
Sometimes you can read right through it and just like block it out. You just read it so you can get to the next scripture. You really miss that the whole point.
Until you need it. Until you need it.
See, we made it look like a bit. I won't tell Pastor that I said, Pastor, guess he's stepping up here when this song's up.
Oh no.
She preaches and teaches. Preaches.
It was you know, when I did it before, I had that one time I had a little bit of time to look over everything, and I mean I know God's going to get me through it, but you know the thing that and I'm not trying to make this about me at all, because I worry about y'all too. I worry about giving y'all what you need, but I don't want y'all sitting out there thinking, oh my gosh, can this please get over with? I got somewhere to go, I got somewhere to be, I got food to cook, I got this to do, I got that to do.
God has us right here. At this very moment. I really think, that that's all the word. God said that this is what they do. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna take a lot of it. I'm not going out there empty. I'm going
Well, I'm glad. I am really glad about that. I really am. Okay, y'all listen.
you better, get that book.
Oh, we got,
Yeah, we have, Eve upstairs.
oh, okay.
And the little one back there, they won't go to
Yes.
Sunday school.
Yes. Okay. You expect me to?
How you gonna read that?
Ready for this, guys?
Really just. Eliphaz.
No jobs, man, that's a joke.
Yeah.
It says right there the answer to whatever that question was. Go up, Scott. The question, does God hear sinners who pray to him? Does he listen to their requests and cries for help? Is he even willing sometimes to answer their prayers? And the answer is, we would not have a Bible if God was unwilling to speak to us. Well, yeah, well, I know passage right there kind of
He does have scripture
Because
here.
there's scriptures up there that goes back to it, but that part of it's not. It was just giving you where the scriptures you go to for what we discussed. Genesis 3:8-19. Genesis 3:8-19. What, 8-19?
Yeah. And then, Genesis 4:6-7, that's when, Cain murdered Abel. And then again, in verses 9-15, that same chapter of Genesis. And then, one of Job's friends, because he was lying during Job's trials. That's it. Y'all sorry about that. That's Pastor.
Lead by example, Pastor.
I thought I had turned that down. Yep. And then there's some more in 2 Kings, chapter 20.
My issue is I just don't know where to go. I know what's in here, but where to go. But I'm getting slowly but surely. Follow my stuff slowly but surely, but you get it. See you later, Pastor. It's 100 degrees outside.